chapter 9, Jesus is God's sacrificial lamb. Several hundred years passed under the Old Testament system of animal sacrifice. But then, finally, the climactic moment arrived. John the Baptist was preaching in the wilderness, preparing the way of the Lord. And as Jesus of Nazareth approached him, John made an astounding public pronouncement that continues to reverberate throughout history. Behold, the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. There it is, the entire plan of redemption summarized in one sentence. By proclaiming Jesus as the Lamb of God, John declared Jesus to be God's sacrifice to pay for the sins of humanity. In the language of 1 Peter 1, verses 18 and 19, you were not redeemed with perishable things like silver or gold from your futile way of life, inherited from your forefathers, but with precious blood, as of a lamb unblemished and spotless, the blood of Christ. Notice some critical observations. Jesus' death was no accident. Jesus' death was not a failed mission to set up an earthly kingdom. His very purpose in coming to earth was to serve as a sacrifice. And as we have already learned, a sacrifice must die. Jesus was an innocent sacrifice. If he had ever sinned, even once, then Jesus could not have been the Lamb of God. He would then have had the price of death on his own head for his own sin, and could not have served as a representative for you and me. In him there is no sin. Therefore he died to remove our sin. The result of being the Lamb of God was to take away the sin of the world. Jesus' sacrifice of his life was a part of God's plan to remove the sins of humanity by paying the judicial price of death. By doing so, Jesus fulfilled Old Testament prophecy. He is referred to in passages like 1 Corinthians 5 as our Passover lamb. Cleanse out the old leaven that you may be a new lump as you really are unleavened. For Christ, our Passover lamb, has been sacrificed. Jesus died so that we might remove the old leaven of sin by his sacrifice. In doing so, in his own words, he accomplished his purpose of fulfilling the Old Testament. Do not think that I came to abolish the law or the prophets. I did not come to abolish, but to fulfill. Jesus came to die, to take the place of animal sacrifice, to fulfill the Old Testament. In his own words from Matthew 20 and verse 28, the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. In his final meal with his apostles, He said, "This is my blood of the covenant which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." As Christians are encouraged to recognize from 1 Corinthians 6, you are not your own, for you were bought with a price. So glorify God in your body. Jesus paid the price of death, a payment humanity did not deserve. One of the most remarkable aspects of this entire idea is that Christ's suffering and death was prophesied clearly, vividly, and specifically some 750 years before the fact in Isaiah 53. Notice just a sample of what had been foretold. "Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening for our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. But the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He was cut off out of the land of the living. For the transgression of my people, to whom the stroke was due. Yet it was the will of the Lord to crush him, putting him to grief, the righteous one. My servant will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. He poured out himself to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many, and interceded for the transgressors. No, Jesus' death was no accident. Jesus' death was the fulfillment of one of the great passages in all of the Bible. A summary of God's amazing plan to redeem mankind in one sentence. Behold, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world.